So it's Danny Flexon here for Seconds Out. Delighted to be joined by my colleague Josh Hart. And we've just come off the press conference for not only Dmitry Bivol and Artur Beterbiev in an incredible fight, which I'm sure we'll talk about in the weeks and months to come, well, not many months until the fight. But the main kind of attractive factor to tune in today was the unveiling, they called it, of the 5 versus 5 participants. Frank Warren's Queensbury Promotions against Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing. No major surprises in the lineups. A lot of the leaks that came out kind of described exactly who we saw up there on the days, revealing themselves previously wearing some masks that looked like something out of Squid Game. But I still enjoyed it. Josh, what did you make of it? And I guess which fight are you most excited about?
I thought originally when we first saw the announcements for some of the fights, I'm not going to lie, I wasn't too impressed with some of the fights that they were making. But now that we've seen the official announcements and we've seen them up on stage, obviously we're yet to see the face-offs. Um, but it's definitely got me that bit more excited. If I was to pick a fight that I'm most excited for, I'm going to say Raymond Ford versus Nick Ball, just based on the fact that we've seen what those two both did last time out. Obviously Nick Ball wrongfully given a draw in a fight that many people thought he won, and Raymond Ford. No, Nick. Did I say Nick Ball there? Um,
Yes.
yeah, I was going to say I thought my head went a little bit gone. And then Raymond Ford with an incredible last 7 second stoppage against Kolmatov, a fight where he was down on the cards and stopped him with 7 seconds to go to win the world title. I think for me that could be my fight of the night, but at the same time, and I'm not going to just start rambling about the whole card. I'm going to make this the last fight I talk about as well.
Not for the
But
whole video, hopefully, but
Yeah, Hamza Sheeraz versus Amo Williams. I think it's a fight that people have been talking about for much longer than we've had the talks for the 5v5. I feel like that's a fight where they're both at such similar stages of their career, and you can just see how highly both promoters rate them. And for the promoter to say, Joe, what then? They're letting them off the leash here. I think that's one of those fights where we are seeing them really get tested now. Undefeated versus undefeated. Someone's always got to go. Um, those two fights for me are two fantastic fights, and I'm thoroughly looking forward to them.
we will run through all 5 momentarily. But just on Ford against Nick Ball, because I agree, I think that probably is the most exciting fight, on the card. It's interesting because Ray Ford ruled himself out of being on this show
Mm.
about a month ago. He said, I'm not ready to fight until, I can't remember what he said, July or whatever. And then Eddie Hearn a couple of weeks ago said exactly the same thing. Oh, it's not going to be him. He leaked it. I think that it was going to be either Josh Warrington or I can't remember who the other one was. One of
I
his
think they
other.
said Josh Warrington or Lee Wood, from what Eddie Hearn was
Okay, so
saying.
Josh Warrington or Lee Wood. I don't think Lee Wood's got a massive intention to make featherweight again anytime soon. So I suppose that was a minor surprise if you'd been, sucked into the deception of it not being Ray Ford in the first place. But it's nice to see Nick Ball getting another world title shot so soon after. I guess money wise and profile wise, it's a great move for Ray Ford, although it seems like a big risk against a hungry, unbeaten challenger in Nick Ball. But let's go through it. There's 2 heavyweight fights because the promoters got to pick 2 weights each. And His Excellency Turki Al Al Sheikh, who's responsible for putting on the whole thing, making this happen, bringing together these previously bitter rivals, although they are still competing against each other, let's not forget. He suggested the heavyweight division as his pick. So there's actually 2 heavyweight fights on the bill, and they are the ones that have been rumoured heavily since this concept was first announced. And that is Daniel Dubois against the IBF #1 heavyweight contender in Filip Hrgovic. And whoever wins that, you would fancy to get a shot sooner rather than later at a world title. Even this could even be for the vacant IBF world title, given that Tyson Fury against Alexander Usyk's first fight takes place on May the 18th, so a couple of weeks before the 5 versus 5. So if it's expected, widely expected, that Fury will not keep that, or Usyk if he wins, if he retains. Yeah, Freudian slip there. Eddie knows all about that after revealing Nick Ball too early. But yeah, so whoever comes out on top on May the 18th aren't expected to be able to hold on to that IBF title for much longer after that. So this could be another world title shot for Dubois, who performed well against Alexander Usyk, but came up just short. And there was some controversy there, of course, with the low blow / body shot, depending on your side of the fence on that one. And then you've got Hrgovic, who, again, in a similar position to Ray Ford, albeit not a world champion, but risking that #1 mandatory position that he's had for quite some time, against someone in Daniel Dubois who's very confident, coming off a good win against Jarrell Miller, where he proved a lot of the doubters wrong in terms of his heart and his guts and his resilience. Yeah, it's a hard one to call, I think. What do you make of that one?
Um, when we look at that fight, I feel like the obvious way to lean is to probably lean more towards Hrgovic just based on the way the careers have played out. I don't really think we've seen Hrgovic in as much adversity and as in much trouble as what Dubois has been. Obviously, I know there's all the doubters out there on Dubois saying that he's not got the heart or anything, but I think he shut them all up last time out against Jarrell Miller. Um, but it's an interesting fight, especially when you look at Dubois. You wouldn't think he'd be getting into such a big and risky fight again so soon after the Usyk fight. Like I said, I know he's had that one fight in between, but he's a young heavyweight compared to the rest of these boys that are out there. He's only what, 25, 26, something like that. And this will be his second, if everything plays out the way they want it to, this could be his second world title shot. If not, if he wins, it's going to make him a mandatory for a second world title shot. Um, and I think it's a fight that a lot of people are going to be looking forward to. Like we said, heavily rumored. So I feel like it kind of has lost that buzz. If in an ideal world where every fight was kept secret, I still feel like some of us would still be sat there now, just absolutely gobsmacked at the thought of all these fights. But most of us have had a lot of time to prepare for them. But again, I think it's a really intriguing fight. I'd say I'd be leaning towards more Hrgovic, but obviously being a Brit, I'd love to see Dubois get it done. But no, a great matchup again.
And in the other heavyweight fight, Deontay Wilder, the bronze bomber, greeted his unveiling with a massive shout of Bomb Squad. Perhaps shouldn't have been too surprised there. I'm not sure what Bomb Squad is in Chinese, but maybe we'll find out before June the 1st as Big Bang Zhang will be on the opposite side of the ring. And this one, I think, similar to what you said, I've got to favour quite heavily, I suppose, Zhang based on recent form. I know he lost his last fight to Joseph Parker, but even there, it was relatively close. He knocked Parker down a couple of times. And he was let down by his conditioning to an extent, but I don't think Deontay Wilder will be anywhere near as busy as Joseph Parker was. I don't think he'll show as much variety. And I don't think we've always seen great stamina from Wilder in the second half of fights. I don't know how much he carries his power deep into fights. And we also don't know, because Wilder's been inactive for a long time, until recently, until he lost himself to Joseph Parker, how much those wars with Tyson Fury really took out of him. Whereas Zhang looked like a pretty proven commodity going into his fight with Parker. You know, those two back-to-back wins over Joe Joyce, albeit they didn't go past the halfway stage. You know, he looked a pretty formidable opponent, fast hands for a big man. Not too bad footwork either, not fast feet. I'm not saying he's got fast feet, but good footwork, good amateur. You'd have to favour him, even though Wilder obviously won a bronze medal at the Olympics. I would still say Zhang was the better amateur overall, and I'd favour him in that one. What do you think?
I think there's two ways you can look at this for me. I think if we're gonna see a similar Wilder to what we saw last time out against Joe Parker, I can't see anything other than a Zhang either on points or if he can maintain his conditioning and stop him late. Um, or if we see a rejuvenated Wilder, the one who's got that killer mindset back. 'Cause I feel like he had that similar. I feel like Wilder was going through that similar situation that AJ was going through after defeat. He took a step back from what his strengths were and tried to be someone that we don't really think he could be. Because we saw AJ trying to be a bit more of a boxer rather than a puncher. Um, I'm not saying AJ's got no boxing ability; he's got plenty of boxing ability, but the way he'd use his ability is to get his punches going and let the power shots go. And I feel like we tried to see that or it looked like we were going to see that from Wilder last time out. But then we got in the ring and we didn't really see anything from him. I don't really think we saw much boxing at all.
And also, while Zhang's stamina has looked suspect a number of times, his chin hasn't. You know, he's taken shots from some big punches, including Joyce, and Parker landed some pretty clean shots. No, Parker's not the biggest heavyweight, but you know, if we're selling Deontay Wilder on the fact that he may have faded, he may not, he is rusty, but the last thing you lose is your power and all that kind of thing, or at least the last thing he loses potentially. But Zhang's got a pretty solid, proven chin. So, it's a difficult one in that sense. Now, you mentioned Ford against Bull, so I'm trying to rush through these so we can get the video out and let people know what we think, and people who've missed the press conference know who's actually fighting. You mentioned Ball Full, but you mentioned kind of in passing, so we'll talk about it a little bit more. Hamza Shiraz against Austin Ammo Williams. Again, widely expected, but this is one where it seems like both fighters are taking a similar level of risk as the other. You know, both young, touted, rising middleweights, seemingly with it all to gain, don't need to take this fight. I think Shiraz is very highly rated by the WBO. No big surprise there. Sorry, Frank. And then you've got Ammo Williams, who's been making waves. His last performance was particularly good, from what I've been told and from the highlights I saw. So yeah, it's a really good to see him going at it at this stage of their career. And you would imagine whoever comes out on top deserves a world title shot.
Yeah, 100%. I think the winner does go on to the world title shot, but at the same time, I think it's a fight where if you lose, it's not over. I feel like if you put up a valiant effort and it's a close fight and it's a good fight, there's no reason as to why the loser won't be able to come again.
Hmm.
But it like you said, it's a very similar level fight. I feel like it's the real 50-50 of the card where these are two fighters who haven't had that opportunity yet. And I feel that's what makes this fight different. They haven't had that opportunity yet to fully show themselves. I know Hamza Shiraz is coming off a good win against Liam Williams in a headline act, but it was a Liam Williams that we didn't know if he had a lot left or not. Whereas this is two fighters on the come up, want to achieve big things in the sport. And probably the most 50-50 fight on the card out of all of them, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you go from that to a fight which, in my view, and I don't mean this to sound disrespectful in any way, but I have the heaviest favourite out of the five in Craig Richards against Willie Hutchinson. There were so many rumours about who Richards' opponent would be. I know Zach Parker was one of the ones mentioned, and it's ended up being Willie Hutchinson, who, let's not beat around the bush, he's incredibly talented, really, really good amateur, particularly as a junior, turned pro quite young. Set the world alight early on, and then ran into Lennox Clark at super middleweight, a weight that perhaps he shouldn't have been at. I think they always say kill yourself. I don't like that term as a metaphor for this, but, really drained himself to make the weight. And yeah, ran into Lennox Clark. And since then, he's looked really good. He's been knocking people out, and he is incredibly talented, but he hasn't really fought anyone of note since that loss. And it's like, have they been looking after him to set him up for another big fight? And if so, they've done the right thing, because here he is about to earn, I imagine, a career best purse against the best fighter he's fought. Craig Richards, kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, in that he wasn't a superb amateur. He was decent, but he wasn't expected to achieve massive things as a pro. He proved himself beyond domestic level, ultimately, although his first title shot at the Lonsdale belt, he lost to Frank Buglioni. But since then, he's just gone from strength to strength, pushed Dimitri Bivol, the bill topper, very hard, of course, and probably gave Joshua Buatsi a tougher fight than Dan Aziz recently did. So, yeah, I mean, I think Craig Richards, again, he's been inactive, but he's now with a new coach in Shane McGuigan, who we have seen improve so many established fighters already. You've got to make, I've got to make, certainly, Craig Richards a big, big favourite against Willie Hutchinson.
Yeah, I agree with that. That you'd make Craig Richards a favourite. He's more proven. He's been in the bigger fights and he's come out on top in some of these bigger fights. Whereas Willie Hutchinson's only had that one big title fight and came up short ultimately. But at the same time, this could be the fight where Frank's seen Eddie's pick of, oh, let's stick in Craig Richards, someone who's been tested. And Frank might have seen this right, we can get Willie Hutchinson a good test here. We can get him a good fight. And they might be thinking this could be Willie Hutchinson's coming out party. But no, I definitely agree with the fact that you'd give Craig Richards, you'd give him the favourite. He's more proven, been there. But I wouldn't sleep on Willie Hutchinson at all, especially at 175. He's not looked bad. He's looked solid in all his appearances up there so far. And a fight that is definitely going to go under the radar when you look at the star power across the rest of the card. But us boxing fans who know these fighters, we know how good of a fight that could actually be.
So you've heard our immediate reaction. We want to hear yours. Let us know, particularly out of the 5 fights, which one are you most looking forward to? And feel free to drop your predictions for all 5. Even chuck in Bivol Beterbiev, or Beterbiev Bivol rather, prediction for that as well. It'd be great to read it. We'll reply it to some of the comments as well. But yeah, let us know what you think. Really appreciate it. Drop us a like and a subscribe as well if you haven't already. Josh, appreciate that, mate. And yeah, let's go and let's get this up, this video.